Okay, so we're going to start. Our first speaker is Professor Dauoda Nidaye from the University of Cheikh Anta Diop, going to speak with us about use of molecular epidemiology and transmission surveillance in Senegal.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to discuss with you on behalf of the whole Senegal team, the NMCP, the UCAT staff, and my collaborator on the molecular epidemiology to support malaria transmission surveillance in Senegal. Just a little remind about the malaria situation in Senegal over the two past decades. As you see, I'm happy that Professor Guy is here because he was the one who really started this job in around 2000. And as we see here, the malaria transmission dropped over the 20 years, about 10 years, from 35% to almost 1 to 2% in terms of mortality and morbidity, because there are a lot of intervention that have been implemented by the National Malaria Control Program and its partner using ACTs, RDTs, bedness, home-based management, and recently the seasonal malaria transmission. So what is important here, where we're trying to understand, because we see a lot of intervention, NMCP Senegal were collecting a lot of indicators, epidemiological indicator, case management, but they understand together with a scientific team that there is a gap knowledge that they try to cover. And then that's why the genetics tool that I'm going to show later have been requested to understand some of the aspects for the transmission intensity and the dynamic of the transmission in Senegal. The transmission is going down in Senegal, less than 2% now for mortality and morbidity, but there is a real discrepancy nationwide. We have, the country, Senegal, is very unique in terms of transmission dynamic. We have the north, where the transmission is very, very low, where they're talking about pre-elimination in the north, like Richard Toll, where the incidence rate is less than 5 per 1,000 inhabitants, about 1 per 1,000 since a couple of years. We have the central part and the western part, like where we have Chess, where the transmission is hyperendemic, but the incidence is between 10 to 15, meaning less, more intense than the north, but it's happening. And compared to the south, in Kedugo, for instance, where the transmission is very high, sometimes more than 300 cases per 1,000 inhabitants a year. And that's the reason why we are interested in our work to understand the transmission dynamic between those two sites. And what we did is we try to, again, use what we call the molecular barcode, because as you know, whole genome sequencing was not an accessible tool, but with Professor Diane's team at Harvard School of Public Health, collaborated with Diane, Sarah Vokuman, Rachel Daniel, and others, they developed the molecular barcode from multiple plasmodium falciparum using whole genome sequencing to identify 24 SNPs to understand the diversity of the genetics parasites relating to transmission. And it has been really demonstrated that there is a real link between genetic diversity of the parasites and the transmission intensity. And as you see here, when the transmission is going down, we see a decreasing complexity of infection, increase of proportion of monogenomic. Clonal parasites will operate, as well as identical parasite lineage and persistence of clonal lineage. That's why we try to, over the 15 years or 14, 20 years, something like that, we try to use these tools to see what we learn about the genomics using the molecular barcode, which was used not only to understand the dynamic of the transmission, but also to understand emergence of resistance using high resolution melting. And here, for instance, using the barcoding, after Senegal implement youth intervention from 2006, we see emergence and increasing of colonial parasites in 2007 in a very huge way. And this increase continued to increase, and exactly what we are going to see in 2015, where the transmission, as I show in my previous slide, abruptly go down. We really see these huge impacts using the genomic barcode of the declining of the transmission in Senegal. These also show that the genetics show, in the first time in chess, which is in chess, the data has been collected in chess, that we have found both population constant and genetic inbreeding. So, meaning that we see that the genetics detects increase of parasite inbreeding after malaria intervention. In the same way also, we see that from 2016, we see over the year the persistence of identical parasite lineage over the year. Some parasites appear from 2006 up to 2016, meaning the transmission is still going up. Even if we see some decreasing, but the transmission is there. Some parasites appear in a very clonal, high clonal way, cluster, about 20 here, for instance, in 2006, coming from 2011. And some are very few, but we definitely see here persistence of clonal parasite. And the report we get from the Senegal NMCP report from chess show exactly the same in terms of transmission decline in chess. And this has been also put it here in another way to show that, for instance, between 2006 and 2016, we see the proportion of clinical infection that are monogenomic as indicator of transmission decline, which makes sense because, I mean, if the transmission is going down, there are less parasites circulating, and then we see the monogenomic prevalence will going up, while the genetic polygenomics, proportion identified also increased a lot from 2016. So meaning over a decade, we really see a declining of the transmission in Senegal in chess, confirmed by using the genomic diversity tools, and exactly what was seen also in the indicator of the National Malaria Control Program. As we see in chess, we try to use then the molecular techniques like the genomics barcoding, the molecular barcoding, to understand the situation in Richard-Toll. Because over the five past years in Richard-Toll, there are a lot of reports coming from the NMCP, because the NMCP collecting data from the public health authorities, where they saying that we have malaria decline, that for them, all cases reported from the clinics are imported cases, because they think there is no case ongoing in there. So, and they have people coming from Dakar, it is, Chess or in the south of Senegal, in a daily, weekly basis or monthly basis. For them, there are the people going and coming back in Richard-Toll, bringing the malaria parasite. What we did is, let's try to use the same approach and technology that we use in chess over the 15 past year, using the molecular barcoding and collecting samples from the clinics and see what the lesson will be learning from that. That's why then, what we did with Sarah Vokuman team, so and Diane, we try to select the cases from the clinics, first case at the clinic and secondary cases also at the household level. From the patient that have been reported as imported cases, what we found is within the household, we've seen same molecular barcode from the parasite. In population without any history of travel, and anyway, at least during the 12 past months, which is in opposite what the reporting was saying from the public health system. And for some with travel, we see unrelated infection, meaning different molecular, clonal parasite, which say clearly to us that there are both. There is still imported cases as reported in the public health, but we have number of local transmission that happening using the secondary health. And to confirm this work, what we did is we worked with the National Malaria Control Program to implement and vector control survey. And the first time they did it after we found this data, They go to Richard Toll, go to the household, and look for vector. And they found infected mosquito vector, meaning exactly there is ongoing transmission in the north. And this was not what was expected because they were reporting decline of transmission. And that's the reason why, after these studies, what the NMCP was doing is to start thinking, implementing a use intervention as they did in other parts of Senegal where transmission is high, because they know that if you don't do something very strong in terms of implementing activities to control malaria parasite, we'll never go through elimination, because as I showed in my slide presentation earlier, Richard Toll is a part of the pre-elimination site in Senegal, and one of the first part of the Senegal where we believe that elimination might happen very shortly in a country level. And this has been also shown in a different manner, that as we see in chess, we also have been seeing, using samples from the clinics, using discarded RDT from the clinics also, we found that there is persistence of colonial parasites season by season. Exactly what we see in chess. However, some seem to be very clonal in a cluster between 2013 and 2015. This is just showing again that we still have transmission even if the transmission is declining. And we didn't stop there for the Richard Toll, because Richard Toll is a real a region of interest, because it's the first part of Senegal where we hope that maybe the transmission will decline very shortly. So there is a big attention from the partner to Richard Toll regions. And then what we did is collecting several samples around the country over the past years, everywhere in Senegal, including Richard Toll. We have Richard Toll, as again, what I presented earlier, Thiès, Dakar, and Kédougou, everywhere, and see what are the links between the parasites that have been identified from those different regions. And compare about more than 2,000 samples of monogenetic infection in Senegal. We found that parasite isolated in Richard Toll genotype was identical to parasite identified in other regions. This is exactly the same clonal that we found in Dakar, in Thiès, and in Ndofane, which is consistent with importation of infection in Richard Toll from other parts of Senegal, which also is a real problem, because until we are able to stop this transmission, importation cases, it will be very hard to reach the elimination. So, and this has been very well documented, because closely looking for the importation, we see that parasites that have been found in Thiès in 2012, the same showed in Dakar in 2013, and exactly the same parasite in 2013, 2014. Meaning one of the biggest problems maybe in the shuttle is imported cases from other parts of Senegal. That's the reason why, again, as I said earlier, we try to use the genetic tools to understand transmission dynamic, but also the case management in terms of drug resistance, because there are a lot of ongoing effort, and unfortunately around the world today, the biggest problem that we have is relating to drug resistance. And over the 12 years, we follow the transmission, the dynamic of the polymorphism of the resistance for all the markers, PFCRT, relating to chloroquine, DH5, DSP4, SPM, and recently the case setting for ICT resistance. And so far, all the Senegal samples compared to other parts of Africa using PARMA are wild type for that. This was something that recently we tried to explore in the south, because in the south we have a biggest problem. The transmission is very intense compared to the rest of Senegal, more than 300 cases per 1,000. We try to scale up intervention, and what we see using the genetic diversity tool, barcoding, we try to understand what happened in Kédougou. Because also in Kédougou, as in Richard Toll, where people were reporting declining or the transmission decreasing, in Kédougou, there are a lot of intervention going on. SMC, bed nest coverage, ICTs, RDT, but report was showing that transmission is going up from the report from the clinics. And they say, what can be happen? Because those tools are very effective. Then When we use the genomics, the molecular barcoding, what we found in 2015 compared to 2014, we are seeing clonal parasites. And in 2016, those parasites coming to be a cluster, meaning the transmission is going down. What happened? After we go back very closely in terms of incidence, we found that they implement what they call the home-based management. We have home-based management in 2013. Compared to 2010, where there was home-based management, definitely the number of cases will increase because they're seeing more clinics or more households to look for cases. It seemed they increased, but the genetic diversity definitely show that the transmission was not going up, it's going down. And that's why we use this tool also to understand the population movement from the south to the north, where also they say that some of the cases from the transshumant is a huge number of people traveling from the south during the training season to the north during the dry season. We found they were reporting that those cases are from the south, from the transhumant, but using the molecular barcode, we demonstrated that the transmission from the transhumant was not a reality. And that's why finally, what Senegal is trying to do is using the molecular barcode for decision making. As they know that it's very successful now, what they want to do is to use these tools as a new indicator to complement what existing, to put it in the databases, in the reporting system, in a monthly basis, to show exactly what's going on. Because they see the success and they want to share it internally with all the program. But definitely, we believe that if we use this molecular barcode with a new approach of Senegal, we'll be able to control everything happening from the strategy. I will not finish without thanking my old collaborator, the Harvard team, with Professor Dimewers, Sarah Bokuman, Rajel Daniel, and others. Also the NMCP team, who really supporting this job, PMI, the Bill and Melinda Gates, and all the massive park working on the North, and all other collaborators really involved in this activity because we hope that together we can reach the elimination in Senegal as expected too far by 2030. Thank you very much for your attention.